Hello everyone, and welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We have an incredible story to share with you, and I can't wait to dive right in. My name is Michael, and the story I'm about to tell you completely changed how I view love, marriage, and even myself. For years, I believed I was doing everything right, at least enough to keep my marriage intact. I wasn't perfect, but I made an effort. I compromised, let things slide, and convinced myself that love meant making sacrifices. But one day, I overheard something that completely shattered every belief I had about my marriage. The moment I heard those words, everything changed. I'll take you through exactly what happened, step by step, because if I had listened to the signs earlier, I might have saved myself from years of frustration. This isn't just a story of betrayal. It's a story about awakening, understanding the truth, and knowing when it's time to walk away. To be honest, my marriage to Sarah didn't begin with love or even deep attraction. It was arranged. Our families had known each other for years and thought we'd be a perfect match. At the time, I didn't have strong feelings either way. I wasn't someone who chased after romance, and Sarah seemed like a nice woman. She was polite, calm, and had a certain charm that made her seem like someone who would make a great wife. So when our family suggested we meet, I agreed. Our first meeting was awkward, not because Sarah was rude, but because we were complete strangers sitting across from each other, trying to force a connection. She didn't speak much, and I wasn't sure if that was just her personality or if she wasn't interested. As time passed though, we started to get to know each other. Conversations became easier, and we learned the basics. Our favorite foods, our views on work, and our general thoughts on life. It wasn't a love story for the ages, but it was comfortable. A year later, we got married. It wasn't an emotional event, just a traditional ceremony with our families, friends, and the usual expectations. Looking back now, I realize I was fooling myself. I thought everything was fine. We had a routine. There weren't constant arguments, and I believed that maybe love would come with time. I'd heard that not all marriages start with passion, and sometimes love develops gradually. So I convinced myself that if we respected each other and worked toward the same future, things would eventually fall into place. But then, one evening, everything changed. I came home from work, tired and ready to relax. As I walked past the bedroom, I overheard Sarah on the phone. At first, I wasn't paying attention, but then I heard her say something that made my heart sink. I would never be with him again. She wasn't angry, just calm and certain, as if she had already made up her mind. My chest tightened. At first, I wasn't sure if she was talking about me, but as she continued, it became clear. She was talking about me. Something inside me broke. I wanted to confront her, ask her directly what she meant, but I didn't. Instead, I quietly backed away. I wasn't ready to face the truth, so I said nothing and carried on as if I hadn't heard anything. But from that moment on, everything changed. I started seeing Sarah differently. All the small things I had ignored suddenly made sense. She had always been distant, rarely opening up unless I asked her something directly. I had assumed she was just reserved, that over time she would open up to me. But now I realized she had never truly let me in, not even from the beginning. It wasn't just emotional distance I noticed. I began to see how she seemed to complain more and grow irritated with things she used to tolerate. It was like she was slowly pushing me away, piece by piece, and I hadn't seen it. I still didn't say anything to her. I wanted to, but something held me back. I wasn't ready to hear the truth from her directly. Instead, I buried the whole situation inside me. I watched her more closely in the weeks that followed, and then one evening, everything became clear. I came home early from work. I hadn't called Sarah to let her know, but I never thought I had to. Our apartment wasn't far, and I was looking forward to resting before dinner. When I walked inside, I headed straight for the bedroom, and that's when I saw them. Sarah was lying in our bed, wrapped up in another man's arms. They were so engrossed in each other that they didn't notice me at first. For a moment, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. It was as if my brain was lagging behind reality. Something inside me snapped. I didn't think, I just acted. Without hesitation, I lunged at him, at Sarah's lover, grabbing anything I could find. I don't even remember my fist connecting with his face before he could react. He stumbled back, trying to shield himself. He wasn't expecting a fight. He struggled to break free, panic flooding his eyes as I struck again. And then, like a coward, he shoved past me, grabbed his clothes, and bolted through the front door, running like his life depended on it. I turned to Sarah, expecting, I don't even know what, fear, maybe regret, or even an apology. But instead of guilt, she was furious with me. "What the hell is wrong with you?" she screamed. "You had no right to hit him." I just stood there, breathing heavily, my fist still clenched. No right, no right. She had just destroyed everything I thought was real, and now she was angry at me for reacting. For once, I didn't argue. I already knew. I took one last look at her. This woman I had tried so hard to love, to make happy, to understand. And then, in the calmest voice I could manage, I said, "You're free to be with him, because this marriage is over." After grabbing what I needed for a few days, I walked out of that house without looking back. I checked into a modest hotel because I needed to be away from her. The room was nothing special, but it was far from her. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, my mind racing through everything that had led to this moment. The signs had been there. I had convinced myself that things would improve, that Sarah just needed time, and that she would eventually see how hard I was trying. But no matter how much effort I put in, I couldn't fix what had never been real to begin with. I reached for my phone, not really expecting anything, but I checked it anyway. Nothing. No calls, no messages. If I had any lingering doubts about where I stood in her life, they vanished in that moment. She wasn't going to fight for this. She wasn't even pretending to care that I was gone. That silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. I knew what I had to do. I opened my browser, searched for divorce lawyers, and clicked the first one with an available appointment. I didn't even bother to check the price. It didn't matter. I wasn't going to waste another second in a marriage where I wasn't wanted. When the confirmation email came through, I exhaled, feeling a sense of finality, something I hadn't felt in a long time. This was it. I was done. During the divorce proceedings, I remember sitting across from my lawyer, barely paying attention as he went over the paperwork. My mind was elsewhere. The divorce was moving quickly. Sarah hadn't contested anything, which told me everything I needed to know. She wanted out just as much as I did. But in the midst of everything, I learned something that made my stomach churn. The man I had walked in on, the one I had attacked in a fit of rage, wasn't just some random guy. He was her ex. The same man she had told me was toxic, abusive, and controlling. The same man she swore she would never go back to. Yet, there she was, sneaking around with him behind my back. I couldn't believe how blind I had been. Sarah had painted him as a monster, telling me that he had manipulated her, never respected her boundaries, and that she was lucky to be in a stable, loving relationship with me. And like a fool, I believed her. I thought I was the safe choice, the man who would treat her right, the one who wouldn't hurt her the way he did. But now, I started questioning everything. If he was truly so terrible, why did she run back to him the moment she had the chance? Had she ever really left him, or was I just the backup plan? The guy she settled for when she wanted something safe and predictable? The truth hit me hard. She never loved me. She probably liked the idea of me, the security, the stability, and the way I worked so hard to make her happy. But love? That was never part of the equation. And the worst part, I had seen the signs. They were there, right in front of me. Yet I had ignored them, convincing myself that love would grow over time. I thought if I was patient, if I tried hard enough, she'd see how much I cared, and she'd finally love me back. But love doesn't work that way. You don't have to convince someone to love you. You don't have to prove your worth to someone who truly wants to be with you. But that's exactly what I had done. I had lowered my standards and accepted less than I deserved, just to hold on to someone who didn't even want to be kept. That realization stung more than the betrayal itself, because in the end, Sarah wasn't the only one to blame. I had done this to myself. I had been blind when the truth was staring me right in the face, and that was something I vowed never to allow again. When the divorce was finalized, I didn't hesitate. I was ready to move forward, rebuild, and leave everything behind me. Lilan, on the other hand, ran straight into the arms of the man she had betrayed me for. She probably thought she had won, that she had traded up, that she had escaped a marriage she never truly wanted. But I didn't care. She made her choice, and I had already made mine. A few months passed, and then the story started circulating through our mutual friends. At first, I didn't pay much attention and her life wasn't my concern anymore. But one day, someone casually mentioned that the same man she cheated on me with was now treating her terribly, beating her over the smallest issues. I froze. This was the same woman who had sat across from me and told me stories about how toxic he was, how he used to manipulate and control her, how he made her feel worthless. And now, here she was, willingly going back to him. The more I heard, the clearer it became. History was repeating itself, but this time, I wasn't the one trying to fix it. He had her under his control now, dictating every aspect of her life. She couldn't even go out when she wanted to. She had to explain herself for every little thing, and when he got angry, it wasn't just yelling, it was physical. And from what I gathered, it was happening often. People expected me to feel anger, pity, or maybe even satisfaction, but I felt nothing. No sadness, no sympathy, no satisfaction, just a void. She knew exactly what she was walking into, and yet, she did it anyway. I wasn't her husband anymore, and truthfully, I had no no interest in the storm she had thrown herself into. She made her bed. Now she had to lie in it. Over a year later, life moved on. I moved on. But then, out of nowhere, a message popped up on my phone. It was Lylan. Hey, I know I don't deserve to ask this, but can we talk? I just stared at it. After everything, she had the nerve to reach out as if we were old friends catching up. I didn't respond. I didn't care. But she didn't stop. A few more messages followed. I'm so sorry for everything. I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. I was selfish. I took your love for granted. You didn't deserve that. Please, Simon, just say something. I could almost hear her voice as I read those words, but they didn't stir anything inside me. She had broken me down over time, making me question my worth. Back then, I would have done anything to make her happy. I spent so much time thinking that if I loved her harder, if I tried more, maybe she'd finally see me. But she never did. And now, she wanted forgiveness. I didn't respond. Not because I wanted to be petty, but because her apology meant nothing. It didn't undo the nights I spent awake, wondering why I wasn't enough. It didn't erase the image of her in our bed with another man. It didn't undo the betrayal, the hurt. So I let her words sit unanswered, just as she had left my love unappreciated. I learned something from all of this. And if there's one thing I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Never settle for a love that isn't reciprocated. I spent so much time trying to be a good husband, trying to make things work, thinking that if I just did a little more, she would appreciate me. But love doesn't work like that. If someone doesn't truly want to be with you, no amount of effort will change that. I ignored the signs, told myself things would get better, but in the end, I was only delaying the inevitable. Pay attention to red flags. I should have known from the beginning. Her emotional distance, her lack of effort, the way she never really opened up to me. I convinced myself she just needed time, but deep down, I now know she was never really invested. And when people aren't invested, they leave, whether physically or emotionally. Looking back, I see now that I was the only one holding on to something that wasn't real to begin with. If someone doesn't value you, walk away before they destroy you. Staying in a one-sided relationship drains you in ways you don't even realize. You lose yourself trying to make someone else happy, and in the end, they either leave or betray you. I spent years thinking I was building something, only to find out she had already checked out. The day I walked away was the day I began rebuilding myself. And trust me, nothing feels better than putting yourself first. So, if you're in a situation where you're constantly wondering if your partner truly wants to be with you, don't wait for an answer. Their actions have already shown you everything you need to know. Respect yourself enough to leave. That's it for today's story. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and turn on notifications so you never miss more shocking real-life stories like this. See you in the next one.